Hello and welcome back to the historic McDowell-Phillips House. We've spent the past few months documenting the preservation and restoration of this grand structure by the Medina County Historical Society. So today we thought it might be interesting to take a look back at the family that built this house and some of their history and see how they celebrated the holidays over a century ago in this wonderful place. Come on in and let's make some discoveries. Hello, Brian. Thanks for having us back in the house. It's wonderful to see the progress that's taken place over, what, 9-10 months now since the project has started. And I know today we're going to take a look at how this family has celebrated Christmas in this wonderful history that was put together by Gloria Brown. So tell us a little bit.
Well, the McDowell family had many great traditions. The house itself held a large number of people, and when families would gather here for parties or especially the Christmas celebrations, they would often stay for a whole week.
Oh, wow.
Which explains why we found so many beds in the barns and the attics. This place must have been pretty crowded with the grandchildren and the in-laws and guests and neighbors coming to visit. But it really started with the big dinner on Christmas, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how all that took place.
Yeah. Well, I bet there's many wonderful stories. I know there's documents and books and things that you found throughout the house. So tell us a little bit about how would the holidays even start here? Who was in charge?
Well, two of the grandchildren wrote some really great letters and documenting the events, but this all started with Elizabeth Blake McDowell, also known as Bio by her grandchildren and children. The Bio ran the show. She was the daughter of H.G. Blake. She accompanied him to Washington when he was a congressman. She grew up here in Medina, actually seeing slaves seeking freedom to the north. Her father was a conductor and helped facilitate those moves over to Oberlin and then on northward to Canada. And then in Washington, she got to meet many famous politicians of the Lincoln era. So this woman was very well read, very well traveled, but when it came to running this house, Bio ran the show.
Well, fantastic. Why don't we take a dive in and see how Bio ran Christmas here at the McDowell-Phillips House?
Sure thing. Bio has been described as a small but very mighty person. She lived to be almost 90. She lived through a lot of American history. As a child, she witnessed slaves hidden in her home. Her father, H.G. Blake, was an abolitionist, and he was active in the Underground Railroad. He would shelter slaves in his attic and then move them on to the next underground station at Oberlin. During the Civil War, H.G. Blake was a congressman, and Bio lived in Washington with him. She saw Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis and became acquainted with many of the most prominent politicians in the country. Then, in 1863, she married a young Army officer, Lieutenant Robert M. McDowell, and after the war, they came back to Medina. We need to keep in mind, as we go through the family history, that the Old Phoenix Bank plays a big role in the McDowell family history. Bio's father, H.G. Blake, founded the bank in 1857. Eventually, Bio's husband, R.M. McDowell, became president of the Phoenix. Later, her son Blake became president, and after him, so did her grandson Ted.
Now, Brian, Old Phoenix Bank is the 3-story building on the southwest corner of the square, right? And it's still a bank today?
Correct.
Okay.
Bio and Robert built this grand house in 1890. Sadly, R.M. died only 5 years later. Bio lived here until her death in 1932. The house remained in the family until 2020, when it was sold to the County Historical Society by her great-great-grandson, Drew Phillips.
That's quite a family history of this place.
Yes, one of my favorite stories about Christmas in this house is told by her grandson, Ted McDowell, who was president of the Old Phoenix Bank from 1965 until 1973. Ted and his family lived in the big white house on South Court Street called Windy Hill. This was built by his father, Blake McDowell, and he describes traveling from Windy Hill to his grandmother's house by sleigh in the early 1900s. Here we'll see Windy Hill. It was built in 1912 by Blake McDowell, Bio's oldest son. here's a portrait of Blake's entire family in the living room at Windy Hill. We can see Ted as a young boy at the age he was when he describes those long ago Christmases.
Christmas at Bio's is a story in itself. When I was a child, all our family spent 4 or 5 days there during the Christmas season. And it is truly one of the happiest memories most of us will ever have. Our family would arrive at Bio's on Christmas Eve, usually by sleigh. Once I recall, the family cow was in tow, and a turkey gobbler aboard for Christmas dinner.
This is how they would have come, up South Court Street, past the old Phoenix, the family business, then turning left on West Washington and go down to the very end of the street.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, and very busy. There were many people that came to the house during the holidays and the week of Christmas when the entire family was there. Bio had 5 children, and they all had children except for Robbie, the youngest. The oldest child was Bessie, who was widowed very young and lived with Bio. Here's Blake, the bank president. This is Corwin, who moved to Boston and founded his own insurance company. Here's Kate, who was married to the editor of the Medina County Gazette. And here's Rob, who died very young, only 43 years old.
Well, that would be quite a house full.
Yes, and another grandchild, Betsy Phillips Whitmore, wrote even more about those long ago Christmases. She loved them as much as Ted McDowell did.
Given such a houseful, it meant that sometimes 16 or so people sat down at the table for 3 meals a day. There was usually a second maid for the great week and a handyman, Abner Bache, to care for the horses and buggies in the barn. A favorite family story is about the time the maids brought a roasted goose into the dining room only to let it fall on the floor. The dining table had 7 leaves and a bell under the carpet for Bio to call the maid. Our typical holiday table featured turkey at one end and goose at the other.
There had to have been quite a few young children here then.
Yes, between 6 and 8 of them, I believe. It depended on whether the family from Boston came that year. They didn't always come, and the kids were mostly boys. According to Betsy Whitmore, the children played in the front hall, which is a pretty large area. They liked to play paper polo with rolled up newspapers, sliding around on the hall on cushions. But the children were kept under control by a very strict set of rules written by Auntie Bess.
McDowell Family Christmas. These are Auntie Bessie's firm and strict rules. Number 1, always remember that Christmas is now, first of all, for Bio. Number 2, remember her house is not a barn. Number 3, it is forbidden that you play in the front part downstairs. Number 4, it is forbidden that you use the front stairs when playing. Number 5, it is forbidden that anyone play except in house slippers. Number 6, keys to door must not be taken away. Number 7, you are requested to pick up after yourselves that you may leave the house as you find it. Number 8, please put things back where you find them. These rules will be added to as found necessary. I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Auntie Bess.
According to Betsy Whitmore, the family had a rather unusual tradition on Christmas Eve. They arranged the dining room chairs in a semicircle around the large fireplace in the front hall. And after the children went to bed, the parents would fill the chairs with gifts. On Christmas morning, the family had another much-loved Christmas tradition. Let's hear Betsy Whitmore's description of it.
Morning was filled with great excitement. After dressing, we formed a parade in the upstairs hall, according to height. Our instruments of good cheer were pots and pans and spoons, and our carol a tin pan parade which proceeded down the stairs into each room and through the kitchen. Our destination was the front hall, where we lined up before our chairs and were permitted to open only one gift before breakfast.
Well, that must have been quite a sight and a sound.
Yes, this truck actually belonged to Drew Phillips, who sold us the house, but it is the type of gift a small boy from that era might have received for Christmas. I think this family had a lot of fun together. Something they did was a bit unusual, that they didn't decorate the Christmas tree until late in the afternoon on Christmas Day. And the men in the family did the decorating in the dining room behind closed doors. When they were done, they threw open the sliding doors. We have a picture of one of their Christmas trees. In fact, it's the only photo of these amazing McDowell Christmases that exists. And the wonderful thing is that the entire family is here, along with some guests.
It's a pretty spectacular photograph. Do we know what year this was taken?
I believe it is 1917. The ladies are all knitting scarves for American soldiers fighting in World War I.
So would they have done that for the Red Cross?
Yes, we believe so. The McDowells were very patriotic people, having served in the Civil War. I'm sure that they did their part to help the troops at home. And we found an interesting notebook listing the presents and their cost for 1917. The pages skip to 1919, indicating that, like today, in 1918 there may not have been a large gathering. Remember, Medina was going through the pandemic in 1918, so large gatherings were not allowed, even the McDowell's Christmases. It's an interesting fact. 100 years later, we're doing the same thing.
Here we are in the same place.
Also, both Ted McDowell and Betsy Whitmore are in the Christmas photo. They are both very young children sitting on the floor in the front row.
That is really cool.
Yes, the party continued on until late into the night. According to Betsy Whitmore, in the evening more guests came, friends from Medina and Westfield Center. Bio did not allow any liquor in the house, so if anyone wanted a nip of something stronger than fruit punch, they had to sneak across the street to where Robbie McDowell lived. Then they had another parade around the house and danced all night. Listen to Betsy Whitmore's description.
Christmas night, after the guests arrived, we had another grand parade, this time with Bio at the head. We would promenade through the downstairs of the house. The promenade ended up with each couple forming an arch through which other couples danced. I can still see the young people wearing the latest fashions: short skirts, dropped waistlines, feathers, and headbands, and dancing the Charleston and the Black Bottom. Maybe someday there will be dancing again.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for sharing those wonderful histories, and to Gloria for putting this all together and diving into the McDowell history. This is such a fantastic house, and as you just mentioned, this is 1 year today that the Historical Society was able to purchase this house and really start the project. So we look forward to seeing what 2021 brings. Hopefully the home can be open for tourists and people can actually come in and get the experience that you've all worked so hard to create.
Thank you. We really appreciate the support of the community. It's been wonderful. We have many more plans to upgrade the landscape, the things we've talked about in previous episodes, and to complete the interior of the house. So it's all coming together. A lot of work, but it's well worth it. It's going to deliver a wonderful community asset to so many people that we're going to be very proud to show off, and also maintain a very important piece of history in our town and community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We hope you'll tune in next year when we cover more about the McDowell-Phillips House transformation and some of the discoveries that will continue to be made in this home. Until then, have a happy holiday and a happy new year.